said, I'm just going to ride on what Jumoke just said now. Whenever I have the opportunity of speaking with professionals like you and businessmen like you, I almost always by default do not want to read your profile, because the amazing thing about yourself is the lovely stories you have to tell. I will have a few leading questions towards the end. We will take on one or two questions that we receive from our audience. But I'm looking forward to hearing your stories. I've read a few about you, and I am so inspired. And so thank you so much again for being on this call. And my first question to you, sir, looking back over the years, and I mean decades that you've done multiple businesses, I should say. If you look back today and someone says, why did you even start business in the first place? Why did you start business? How did you spot the opportunities that you responded to? What will be your response?
I'm a serial entrepreneur. It's as simple as that. I've always wanted to be business. I was fascinated by business. I started my first business when I think I was about 16 years old. I was meant to be going to school in London, but I was busy trying to make money. And my first business, I'll tell you, was a snake called Snakes Are Freak, and I will run into it quickly. I was importing snake skins and crocodile skins from Lagos, from Nigeria.
Interesting.
And I was having them made into boots and shoes and handbags in England. And I was selling them even to Harrods at one stage. But that didn't last long because I didn't understand the basic tenets of business then. But I should say, just for a sort of a teaser, I must have really liked business because when I was, I think, 8 years old, I literally sold my first bicycle to my girlfriend for £1. It was pounds in those days in Ibadan. So, no, going on from there, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I decided to go. Do you want me to go on, or do you want me?
Yeah, please go on, sir. Go on. Okay. I know when to bump it.
I later decided I wanted to be in business. My father said, okay. So I went to the university in America. That was the place for business. I did my first degree in business. And then I did my MBA 43 years ago now in America too, at Western Illinois University. I was lucky to have as our dean at the time, very lucky, who was the former dean of the Harvard Business School. But he retired and he lived where we were, our university was. So he retired home and he took up the job next to his house. So he was happy. So were we. And then from graduating, I came back to Nigeria, I think 1980, and did my youth corps, very important. And I started work for John Holt Investments. And I got the job eventually at John Holt. This will be interesting. It's part of my
go on.
in life. I went for my interview with a man who's now late, who taught me a lot. His name was David Simpson. He's English, but he'd been in Africa over 35 years. He loved Africa. And when he was interviewing me in an MBA, went to school in England, did this, did that. At the end of the interview, he said, you want to be a marketing manager in John Holt? I said, yes. He said, what do you know about Nigeria and the market in Nigeria? And I said, nothing.
Not much.
And he said, you've got the job. And then he said, you got the job because you were honest. He said, you told me you didn't know. He said, people walk in here and they make up all sorts of, or try to answer the question in a way that, and he said, you just came out and you were straightforward. He said, it means that you're a blank sheet of paper and I can teach you everything that we need you to learn. And I spent the first year traveling around Nigeria. So for someone who knew nothing, they gave me a car and a driver, and 3 weeks in every month, I was to visit every state in Nigeria
Wow.
for a year and to do a report on the markets. So I went to like Onitsha market, Wiri, you name it, Kaduna, Port Harcourt, everywhere, and Kano, the whole lot. Anyway, it was a very good learning experience for me. It gave me a good grounding, and I got to know the Nigeria that I didn't grow up knowing. As I said, I was a serial entrepreneur, and eventually I decided I was in John Holt for about 8 years, 8 years, and I got the 7-year itch, and I decided to move on. And I started my first business, which was actually desktop publishing. In those days, which you call, I don't know what you call it now, but it's, it's all over.
There are business cafes and business centers now.
In those days, we used to, and with a friend of mine who's great in technology, we set up desktop publishing, which was really to produce annual reports and manuscripts on the computer. In those days, we didn't have laptops so and we had to convince everyone that you didn't need to go to a printer to do all the typesetting and all that. We could do all that on a computer, and it was difficult. No one understood it. And you go to big companies, but we eventually got people like Cadbury's and Coca-Cola and a few big accounts, and got going. And as you do, running your business, it's again learning. I should go back. I had a good education in running a business in John Holt's. I may have been a serial entrepreneur, and I like to do business, but the basic tenets of doing things properly, keeping records, boring, accounting, making your reports, because all that was very important. I was reporting to somebody in those days, so I had to do them. And it taught me how to. So that was useful in our first business. And then from there, I started doing some trading with another friend of mine, and we were importing everything. We were importing lamb from New Zealand and butter from New Zealand, and all across. In those days, imports were big business in Nigeria. Still is, but so we bring container loads of this stuff and sell it to Kingsway and UTC. I was a trader. Fast forward, a friend of mine came along and said, why don't we look at something to do with, there are no duty-free shops in the airport. This is about 1987 now, 88, yes, 87. And maybe no proper duty-free shops. So I said, okay, that looks like a good idea. So off I went to FAN, as it was called. Or was it called FAN? FAA. And got a report done, did all the study, went there. And, okay, these are the pitfalls of life, which you all, and I'm sure many of you people will have experienced it or may experience it. We handed a report in 1987, and it was a military regime. I think Babangida was in power. And of course, we had an Air Force Air Vice Marshal, no names need to be mentioned, who was in charge of the airports of FAN at the time. And nothing happened, except I later discovered that our report had been kept in a drawer for future use. I'm very honest about these things, so please.
Thank you.
Anyway, he retired, and life is funny. Another air marshal took his place, who was a very nice man from Benin, that area, and he was completely a gentleman. I went to see him, and I talked to him and told him about it. He said, yes, he'd heard about all this. He was very embarrassed by it all. And his colleague had misbehaved. And he made a point of getting me a place in the airport to start our business. That took all of 3 years. So one of the first things I will tell you, another thing I'll tell you, I should say, is perseverance is very important.
True.
You must try to stick at what it is you want to do, especially if you know it's worthwhile. Now, there were no good duty-free or proper duty-free shops in the airport at the time. And I think the only duty-free shop, now there was one that was run by the government itself. So after 3 years, we got the approval, we got the space, we designed the shop, and we set up the shop, which was a properly purpose-built shop, had it built in UK, set up in a warehouse so they could see how it looked, dismantled and shipped to Lagos and reassembled in the airport. Which was the other thing was that was my first sort of real foray into what I consider international business in that respect. And another thing I learned then is always try to do things to a international standard, to a universally accepted standards, rather than, as we like to say at home, this is Niger and this is how we do it.
I like the way you put the tone to this Niger.
Because, you know, really, you know, we don't live outside of the world. And we are also very capable. So I'll have to say that. We just need to get going and do what we know how to do. After all, there are many of us all over the world doing amazing things, as you well know. So let's not, when we come home, we don't have to behave like it's a bit different here. The sooner we get out of that mode, the better
for all of us as a country.
For everybody, yes. So from there, we set up duty-free shop, international standards. And another lesson I found that not only government officials, but not Nigerians, the fact that we set up the shop and it looked so good and it was, you know, international standard. The first thing that everybody said to us in the airport is, Mr. Akerele, you have made money. And I'm thinking, how have I made money? I've just invested all this money. I still have to make it.
Yeah.
But that wasn't thought of. This man has made his money. So we always jump the gun. Yeah, we see things and we imagine that, which always takes me back to a lot of people say, lucky for those who.
That's true. Or you must have one connect in government. Someone
they had one that went in the back.
Yeah.
So anyway, we did that. Now I said perseverance, and you have to understand the market. It was military times. We didn't understand really the concept of airport shopping. So whilst we had a great shop, we didn't have a lot of customers. The reason being, there used to be a lot of people shop when they're comfortable, when they're relaxed, and they're looking because they have the time to look for something to do and all that. In those days, if you went through Murtala Mohammed Airport, you went through about 4 or 5 military checkpoints in the airport. And most of the people shopping, especially the expatriates who like to shop because they're going home, sort of, they're not looking at shops. They're looking at to get to the closest they can get to that gate and just wait.
Just get out
of the plane. So it was okay. It wasn't as good as we expected, but it was all right. And of course, military regime eventually disappeared because we opened that shop 1990, 91. And that was coming to the end of the military. And then we were running the shop and it was going well. One of my premises is I somehow decided when I first arrived in Nigeria, 1 naira, and you probably all know this because you're busy, 1 naira was worth more than $1. Yeah, how things have changed, right?
Yes.
And it was so good. And this is why I feel for my young.
A number of us are on this call. So
future generation. We could fly to London for next to nothing. And on my John Holt salary, grade 2 manager or 3 manager, I could fly to London for next to nothing. So it made a big difference. Anyway, I decided, because by the time I started business, I can't remember exactly, but the naira had become 10 naira to $1, and I'm thinking, yeah, this does this. So with my MBA program, I'm thinking there's a slide coming. So they always say hindsight, but I was, I thought the duty-free business also afforded us earning in dollars.
Oh, wow.
So we were always able to hedge against devaluation, or whichever way you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so that was good for us. And we managed our business well, I think very well. And then walking around in the airport, bored because there are not many
Business
flights.
wasn't good and all of that. Yeah.
One of my bed bugs about aviation in Nigeria, because we need to open up our aviation. Nigeria could be and should be the major hub in Africa, both Lagos, Abuja, and elsewhere, but specifically Lagos, Abuja. And we should be able to. We should be as busy or busier than even Dubai.
That's true. I mean, even if you go by the population of the country and the number of trade partners that we now have within East and West Africa, for instance, there's a lot of in and out of Nigeria into those countries. So yes, we can actually do a lot more.
Yes, and we need to push that, not just for aviation, but in all areas. We should be the center of a lot of stuff, and we can get there eventually. Anyway, that's a philosophical, and we'll discuss all that in the future.
Okay.
Then walking around the airport, as you do, bored, not much going on, I discovered one day, I think it was about 1997 by now, that the aircraft were coming in, and there was a plane, I think it was KLM, was offloading, and I was watching them offloading trolleys that the food is on, the food trolleys were being brought out of the main cabin in the aircraft and brought down, and then from the cargo hold there were trolleys coming out and being taken up. So I simply just asked them, I said, well, what are they doing? They said, they're bringing the food for the return flight. And a bit like I don't know what, the penny drop. I said, really? You mean we don't cook food here for flights going back? They said, no, all the food on all the aircraft, which is KLM, BA, and Lufthansa, you name it, is brought in for return journey. And I said, oh,
that can't be. That shouldn't be.
I said, I can cook that. I can do that. So I looked into it, and I discovered actually it wasn't quite as straightforward as I thought, but because it's highly technical business, actually. But I looked into it, I did my research, discovered, yes, it was possible, and I discovered all sorts of things. You have to really look into what you want to do. And the basic thing, you have a distinct advantage. The biggest thing was the carts, the food, the plates, everything, cutlery, crockery, everything you bring in weighs a lot, so you're carrying double, and weight equates to fuel. The more weight you have, the more fuel you have to burn, and the most expensive thing on an aircraft is the fuel. So you're saving a lot of money if you can not carry the return journey food. So we had a distinct advantage. So I looked into it, as I said, and I went to England, I went to Germany, I went to Holland, I went to France, I did all of them. I went to catering units in all these places. And then I got an architect, a Nigerian architect who was very good. And I took him around again with me so we could look at how. I said, can you
how things are done?
Can you design this? And we did all that. And I've jumped ahead. Before I did that, and I said, okay, how do we start? So timing in life is everything, or in business is a lot. And sometimes you get lucky. I've done businesses where timing was not so good, but I'll tell you about that, a quick side thing. But just as
I'm taking the notes, don't worry, sir. I'm taking the notes. some of these things you have to come back to. I'm taking the notes.
Okay. When I was about to start looking at the business, British Airways and all airlines for that matter, the era of specialization was coming into the world of business generally. And airlines were getting rid of their catering units. In the past, catering units were owned or part of the airlines. So because they were specialized, and we don't do catering is not our main business. We take people. So they were getting rid of them. So they were selling them off or giving them off to people, depending. And BA, they had about 50-something units around the world.
Wow.
To all the countries they would go to, basically, almost. And in Nigeria, they had a catering, not a catering unit, they had a turnaround catering unit. And because they had gone ahead of the competition, and what they did was they put a small unit, which meant they could do the tray setup and wash the plates, which are heavy, and cutlery and all that. And then they bring in the food separately. So it meant that
they don't have to carry cutlery and all.
Yeah. So they didn't know who to hand it to. And at that time, they had seen my duty-free shop and the way it was. So I'd gone to them and said, look, I'm thinking of doing this business. But and they said, look, talk to me. And you sound like a serious guy. We like what you've done in your duty-free product, because they used to shop in there a lot too. It's like one thing leads to another. And they said, well, we're looking for someone to take it over. So we did it. And funny enough, this isn't a good thing too, just so you know. The two countries where they were not able to hand over their catering because they were not confident that people could do it.
Nigeria was on the list, right?
Well, only two, actually. Nigeria was one of them. The other one, surprisingly, was China. There you go.
Big market.
The great China that we see today.
Yeah.
You remember? So it's a good example in some ways. It was 40 years ago. No, it was 30 years ago, 30-something. But still. And now look at China. It's leaped ahead. Anyway, I did an arrangement with them. I didn't have a lot of money, but I was able to get enough money together. I think it was about $100,000, and with my partners, and there's a lot of money, in those days. It is.
Yes, it is.
And they wanted 200 or 250, and they had a catering unit, and they had these things called high loaders, which you all know are the trucks that go up to the plane and put the food up and what. So they sold us the high loader, and because I didn't have the money, but I was able to do the work, BA said, okay, we'll give you the contract, we'll give you our unit, but you work for the next year and a half, 2 years to pay off the balance.
Wow.
And that's how I got into the in-flight catering business, which I am still in today, although retired. Nobody was doing in-flight catering in Nigeria. So for a while, we used the tray setup unit. And then there's a bar in the airport which doesn't exist anymore. I then used this bar kitchen. I took that over, and we started doing catering in the bar, the kitchen of the bar. And I discovered in my journeys that most airlines, people don't know this, especially in Europe and around the world, especially economy class, most meals are made, mass produced in big factories. They're not actually made on site, and they ship them around the world. So I discovered that I could actually buy container loads of food, ready prepared, and bring it and store it, and then do that. So I did that. I got South African Airways on board, and we quickly realized that, well, this business is going to grow. We're going to need to do something. So needed money to do a proper feasibility study. Went to the IFC, talked to them. They had a branch called the ADPF, I think, ADP, and for smaller businesses, and we we got qualified for a grant for 100,000. Well, to do a feasibility study, which was going to cost $100,000 just to study, which is another point. Do your study, get your market thing, everything right. They now paid for 80% of that. So we had to pay 20. The IFC group paid 80. They agreed with us, a international consultant, to write the study, to do the study, which was then became bankable. And then they held our hands to go around to the banks to raise, I think it was about $5 million that we needed to build a catering unit, a proper one. At the same time, I was negotiating with FAN to get the permission, well, the land to to build a proper factory, because normally your in-flight catering has to be at the airport. It should be in the vicinity of the, so because of health and standard, health and safety. Anyway, it was very difficult to convince the night, and this is a problem for those of you who are in business, that which you probably experienced. Our banking sector is not well set up to help us develop business and the economy in Nigeria, which is a shame, which is something we need to work at. And as you know, high interest rates and even just getting loans for business is a problem. But you, again, perseverance through all this is perseverance. Perseverance. And we went around all the banks, and they asked us many questions, and nobody quite understood
what you were trying to do and all of that. It was new in the country.
Yeah, so we had a hard time getting. We eventually went to Citibank, and there was a lady in charge of this area, aviation, a Nigerian lady who was very advanced thinking. She was senior executive, and he thought, oh, this is a good project, and said we should look at it more. We did. I went to GTB, Diamond Bank, and also I even had one senior bank executive ask me that, Mr. Akerele, this equipment you're going to buy is very technical. If you buy it, if we give you and you buy it, and airlines stop flying to Nigeria, what will we do? How will we sell the equipment, especially the high loaders, which one high loader costs about $250,000? And I looked at him and I said, well, I'll tell you this. If the airlines stop flying to Nigeria, I dare say that your bank will be out of it. Because we are in real trouble.
Yeah. You won't have a bank.
He looked at me and said, he has a point. Anyways, they still didn't give us loan. The upshot of this was we met a Swiss gentleman who had already built a catering unit in Ghana, and he had a catering unit in Switzerland.
Interesting.
And that is not why I'm here, by the way. He obviously could see the advantages. He built a unit in Ghana, Nigeria being much bigger. He was enthusiastic. So we went to look at his catering unit, and in Switzerland, in Zurich, and Citibank, I'll just call her Folake, I won't say her full name, came with us, and Citibank said, we'll loan you the money, some of it, half of it at least. And the Swiss gentleman said he could arrange it through UBA, Swiss Bank, UBS, and as he would guarantee the loan, and eventually we got the money from them. So the unfortunate thing was that no Nigerian bank per se, invested in the startup of my business, which is sad.
But I'm sure they came calling much later.
Um, and then we built this catering unit, and I suppose the rest in that area is history to an extent. We finished it in we started the company in 1997 when I discovered it, and 1998, and we built the catering unit in 2003. We opened it. It was on 10,000 square meters. The catering unit itself, including offices, is 3,000 square meters. And then we have another extra 1,000 square meters of warehousing. One of the things you learn very quickly, again, back to international standards. When I was building the unit and I went around, the likes of British Airways, who I started with, but I went to see their catering people in London at their headquarters. They looked at me and told me flatly, Richard, we will never take catering from Nigeria. You just do not have the capacity. They looked at me squarely in the face. They were not embarrassed. It didn't happen. Well, I'm glad to say that many years later, we do all their catering. I have done for more than 10 years in their first class business economy. So there you go. It is possible. And they did come around to know that, it can be done.
It can be done.
So for all of you say you can't. And it's very technical. It's not easy. It's not, as one minister thought it was, Mama Put. As much as I might like Mama Put myself, I can't put it on the plate.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's a highly skilled, highly technical, because we have to meet many standards, especially hygiene standards, because most people don't realize from beginning to end of a processing of food for aircraft is several hours during the day. It needs to be kept at temperatures because you cannot afford to have any sort of germs or
you can.
going in. Otherwise, it's a problem. If anybody, a flight to London on a 747 or whatever, you're flying 7 miles in the air.
Yeah.
And
you don't have any emergencies that you can prevent.
300 people on an aircraft who are badly poisoned. It's a problem. And there's a detail I won't, because we'll talk about business itself. But the point is, quality and standardization is very good. We have international people coming to see us from all over the world, mostly Canada, actually. They do inspectors, and they come without telling you sometimes, or the airlines sell them. They take swabs, and they swab counters and things. They take them back and analyze them, and God help you if you don't have it right. Our business, we carry $140 million worth of insurance cover. We have to. It's just required in case anyone does get sick. Airline pilots, captain and co-captain, co-pilot do not eat the same meal. Those people don't know, just in case. And crew eat different meals just to make sure that, if one's contaminated, maybe there you are. So it's a process that has to be followed. Has to be very hygiene standards. Going in, we wear, just like you're going into some sort of laboratory. Your hands clean. We wear hair nets, gloves, everything. Even covers for shoes.
Wow, true.
So you have to maintain all that standard. You have to keep records. So going back to the generality, you must keep your record keeping, your standardization, your processes, ISO. The beauty of ISO, why do you do standards? I'm probably preaching to the converted of people who know this already.
It's helping.
Is that once you have the ISO standards and processes in place, it makes it very simple for anybody who's coming in new, because they just have to follow the system. It's not made up. It's a system. They can study it, and boom, they're in. So it makes life very simple. It makes checking very simple too.
Yeah.
And then you go from there. Obviously, you have to have good accounting policies and so on and so forth. What did I learn from my experience of going through? One, persevere. I've told you about BA. They didn't want to, they do. Two, be open to ideas from all over the place, because you do not have the royalty on knowledge. Learn from those who've done it before you. So go around, study. Adapt, yes, but as I said earlier, don't make it this Nigeria. So maybe we can do it like
you can cut corners here. We can save a few bucks here.
Yeah. One of the things I'm proud of is that, again, it's just an offshoot. Before we started, nobody wanted to have the international airlines didn't want to have Nigerian food on board.
Yeah.
And they used to come up with especially BA, all kinds of reasons. We've done a survey, which is not true, that Nigerians prefer to eat foreign food when they are traveling. And of course, I'm back in Nigeria, so I'll say, well, why is it that the English people don't want to eat foreign food when they're on board? So we did eventually get things like jollof rice and things, although he still don't do it the way I like.
We should thank you. We should say a big thank you.
It's important that we Nigerianize things, because that is how future generations understand that we are capable to do things. It's psychological. That's why we need national carriers. I'm not voting for any particular airline, I don't care. But we need probably 2 national carriers, or flag carriers, not national. Let me change that. I don't want the government involved. The less government, the better. We need government to make rules and regulations and let us get on with the work.
Make it possible to run businesses.
Yes. The reason being is, take my business. I didn't know this. When you start, I thought, we'll be supplying Coke, Fanta, this, that, this is great trading.
All excited.
Everything, all these items you see on board. It's not true.
Wow.
Because those of you who fly, and I'm sure most of you do, you'll notice that if you fly on BA, everything on BA is the same. Whether you're flying Lagos to London or London to Johannesburg or London to America, the bottle of water is the same.
True.
The bucket, the butter is the same, and so on and so forth. Because of standardization, because they want everybody to recognize, this is the
same way, and it's from Britain.
Everything is part of it. So how does that help? If we had a national carrier, I keep saying national flag carrier, who's flying all over the world, it would help business downstream, because all our people producing, whether it's snacks or water or what, could have a huge market. For instance, BA is the biggest buyer of some brands, like Tattinger champagne. The biggest customer when they buy for BA, for Tattinger, is BA, and likewise for other airlines.
Wow.
You can see the
value is enough.
The value chain going backwards is huge. But we don't have that, so that's problem. But I did learn very quickly that so we have to import what they want. But they send it to you. They just send you everything. That's why you need a big warehouse. So every country, so the French, Air France, buy everything that's French.
True.
Even if you go on Emirates, you'll notice that the water that Emirates have on the plane is used in Dubai. It's just the way it is. Yeah. So it's all about standardization. So getting our product on board is a psychological thing of, this is Nigerian. And people, you may not need it, it's subliminal. When young people see that, it helps them to understand, we can do that, or we can improve that, or why don't we do it? And it just grows.
Boom, it just grows.
So these things are very important. I try to get the company to promote as many Nigerian products as we can, as we're allowed to. In the end, since we don't have our own flag carriers, we have to rely on other airlines to carry Nigerian products.
Amazing.
But
Amazing.
I also learned very quickly that you need good systems in place for everything. Key is purchasing. You need good systems for accounting, processes, and all that. When you have bad systems, then you have problems. So for the first few years, we had some bad systems, and we paid for it because money was disappearing. I consider myself, this sounds funny, because when I started in the airport, I used to leave home. I lived in VI. I used to leave home at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't leave the airport till the last flight left after 12.
I can imagine, like, past 12.
I did that for years because I just had to make sure it worked. Picking the right team is important. You're in HR, you know that. You employ, you look for people.
You can relate.
And having a good team is very important. Nurturing your team is important. Team spirit is important. I don't believe in being an Oga at the top. So I think it's very important. It's important that your staff see you doing what you want them to do occasionally. Yes, you are the Oga, but it doesn't mean that
you can't do anything. You shouldn't just sit around you.
And I can tell you, when I first started, and we couldn't afford, or we didn't yet have a Highland, and when we started in Abuja, for instance, just an example, which it carries the staff. When we were loading the first BA flight that we did in Abuja, we had no high loader. So we had to physically offload the trolleys, which are heavy, down there from the aircraft and take the trolleys up. And one's going up a lot heavier. But I did that myself.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, it's something that people, people see you doing it and they're impressed. It makes them work harder because if Oga can do it, who are we?
Who are we?
Yeah. And I'll tell you another story about that. When I told you about duty-free business, I didn't tell you that we got a license, I think it was 1993, when they had Chogum in Abuja. And we got a license from the Minister of Finance and Chua Kongo to do a diplomatic shop in the Hilton Hotel in Abuja. And as with all things in Nigeria, it came late. So we got the license the day the Chogum was about to start, although we had applied way ahead.
Way ahead.
So we now had to create a shop in the Hilton and stock it overnight. So we missed the first night, the first day, and we did. And with my older brother, who is now 80 years old, by the way, I won't tell you how old I am, but we offloaded cases and cartons and crates and shelving units and everything from a flight, took it to Hilton, and then overnight we were putting up shelving, putting up boxes and offloading television sets, radios, cigarettes, everything. And when we started at the staff in Hilton said, Oga, you can't do this. You're a big man.
Oga.
So my brother said, well, if we don't do it, who will? This is what we do to live. How we make a living. So we do it. And the staff volunteered. They're not our staff, the Hilton, and they helped us do the whole thing, which is typical of our customer, our people too. If you can show them, they'll follow you. You just need to be a good leader, or at least lead by example, not just by mouth.
Amazing.
So, anyway, we loaded the aircraft in the airport. We started, and one of the best, I suppose, things that you can get from a staff, in your own staff, and is that when they say to you, "Oh God, you're not like an Oga, you're just like us." I say,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's good feedback right there.
Yeah, if that's how you really, I think you should interact with even the lowest of stuff.
Mhm.
So you know that they know that everybody is important. That for me, that's important. I was telling you to go up and down late and all that, but I consider myself kind of lazy. So I'm very, very quick to put systems in place, which means I don't have to do too much work.
I like the way you put it that way. I mean, once you invest your time and effort in creating the system, you can now sort of step back and do quality assurance and then put the right people in place.
And I remember I put all the systems in place, and I retired in 2015. But I don't think from around 2006 or so, I don't think I signed any checks in my own company ever again. Simply because we had systems in place and people who were responsible. I was a signatory, and if, of course, somebody wasn't around on holiday or sick, yes, but it happened very rarely. That's what I mean about putting systems in place, giving people the responsibility to do the jobs that they are assigned and the power, and also putting the systems in place to check that everything doesn't go wrong and they don't, whatever. And it gives you the time to think about the future or where you want to take the company, which was what I was able to do. So in around 2000, when we started, go back here, in 2004, 2003, reputation is very important. No, 2005, sorry, 4 or 5. I think, and please correct me, President Obasanjo was still around before he left, and he had agreed that he wanted to commercialize the airports. And this whole story that we keep talking about of giving the airports out to private, concessioning, the airports.
Concessioning, yeah.
And they were going to concession Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Kano. And it was being done by the IFC. And the IFC did a whole report, and they're all publicly available. And they said they should start with Abuja because it was simpler, easier, Lagos being big, and they wanted to get the system right. And I was an in-flight caterer, if you like. So we're part of what they call ground handling overall in the industry and aviation services. I didn't really think I was someone who knows about running an airport. It's a very special, very important thing. But I got in because I'd worked with IFC to open the airport. They somehow got my name and they said, "Okay, would you mind being part of the bid?"
Amazing.
I don't know anything about running airports. But it doesn't matter. You can put a consortium together. We need Nigerians who, have established themselves. This is IFC took it, and reputation in your industry is very useful in life generally. So anyway, long story short, we put a consortium together, and with some Austrians, some Indians, and some other Nigerians, and lo and behold, there were 32 bidders around the world. At the end, it came down to 2, the South Africans and ourselves, and we won the bid in 2006, and to have Abuja Airport. The downside of life, because you must take the ups and downs. Our country, we're talking plane being what it is. It was an IFC bid. I was surprised that this was too straightforward and too easy. How did it happen? We were rejoicing happily. We had to put down money, $10 million actually in the end, which was the sign-on fee, which we borrowed. And lo and behold, over time, before we knew it,
they canceled it.
Now, one of the downsides of the business in Nigeria, it took me 3 years to get that money we'd given back. So, you have to take the ups and the downs and the lows and the highs.
Wow.
Luckily, eventually we got it back, and some people helped us to get it back, and the banks helped us too, who loaned us the money. So it's about working together with people. Very important.
Yeah.
Nigerians must learn, we must learn to work together. Team effort. Work together, very important. Very, very important. Leveraging off each other's skill sets, knowledge, advantages, and so on, so can only help us grow. That's why, I'm sure you all know this, but just because I feel it's important, I'm saying it. That's why you notice the Indians all work amongst themselves.
That's true.
The Lebanese all work amongst themselves.
Yeah.
We must do that, because you, again, notice those of you who study economics, or the more times the money goes around in your system before it goes out, the better it is. And if you can
The better it is for this,
better it is for your system too. Anyway, we didn't win. Well, we won the bid, but we didn't get the airport in the end, which is a long story in and of itself. I won't go into that. But I have told you, putting systems in place, very important. It allows you to sit back, to grow the business. When I sat back, I soon realized that if you wanted to sustain your business in Nigeria or anywhere else, you needed to grow. And in the aviation sector, and I'm sure it's the same, what you find is having little units of catering dotted around Africa or the world you need to consolidate. So I decided that the next thing was to grow the business. We already had a percentage of Ghana, because when we did the deal with the Swiss chap who built he took a share of us and we took a share of him. And that was part of the arrangement. So then I said, right, what is it that the airlines want? The airlines, British Airways, Air France, doesn't matter. They don't want to deal with lots of little guys. They're coming to Africa. They'd rather have
max of 3 people
who they can talk to. So we fly to Uganda, we fly to Kenya, we fly to Joburg. But we only need to talk to you. There you go. And then that's it.
Yeah.
We sorted out everything for the whole or most of the continent. Now that's what I realized the bigger international caterers were doing. So there are some foreign caterers, the biggest in the world, who are in at least 15 countries in Africa. And those are my competition. The thing about my business is that I'm competing internationally, even though I'm local. So, and that's very important. So you must be able to match them. So what happened? If we were going to bid against, say, LSG, who are the biggest, they're German, they're part of Lufthansa Group, a separate company, or New Rest, or Servair, which is part of Air France, who are in many countries in Africa. It's very difficult because the catering unit in Paris, that guy doesn't want to go to 15 different countries. Let me talk to this man here, and I sort out everything for all the 15 countries. Job done. So that's what we were up against. So I went to Kenya, I went to South Africa, I went all sorts of countries, Ethiopia, trying to develop catering units in other countries. Of course, in catering unit, you can't just build one. You have to get permission from the government, from the aviation authority, and so on and so forth. Very difficult. And the lesson I learned that starting in another country is not easy. And Africa is still rather dependent on foreign or international organizations. So rather, even though colonialism may be over, the majority of aviation catering in Africa is controlled by Europe. It's as straightforward as that in every country. So in just about. So I tried to break that deadlock, didn't have much luck. However, which is an example of people, I went to Rwanda and I met with the NESG, so always good to be part of an organization like that. And went with an NESG group. We went and we met with the president of Rwanda, Kagame.
Yeah.
And then he gave us his spiel, and then he asked each one of us in the group what we wanted to do. And I told him, well, I'd like to build a catering unit in your country, sir. And he said, really? I said, yeah. He said, I know about you Nigerians. You talk a lot, but you don't do things. I said, he said,
well, I've done it.
He said, you've heard about me. He said, I'm very bad if you don't do what you say. I said, yes, I've heard. So anyway, he said, okay, we'll see. And the next thing I knew, he sent a team to Lagos. He said, go and check out this guy, see if he's for real. They came, they spent 3 days, they looked around, they went back. Kagame has a thing, and that is, first, let me see if there's anybody in Rwanda that can do the business. If not, let me look for an African. And if I can't find an African, then I'll go outside.
Nice, nice.
So, and he's true to his word on that level, if you can do it, because Lufthansa, LSG, were ahead of me. They actually were nearly signing their agreement. And he told aviation people, no,
don't do that.
Give it to this guy. He's from Nigeria. Nothing else, just like that.
Wow.
So we've got a catering unit in Rwanda, which is there today. And I had an idea, which is important. Cooperation, I always tell you, it didn't work in the end, but there are many reasons, and we can go on forever about why. You need support and cooperation. If you have that, the world, there's nothing you can't do. So my idea, my plan, was to become the biggest indigenous caterer, in-flight caterer in Africa. But to do that, you need the support of, fellow African countries. Why? My plan was to go to all the major airports in Africa, the centers, and do an arrangement, which is what I did with Rwanda. So I invited Rwandan Air, which is a branch of government, to be my partners. And we gave them 30% of the business.
Okay.
And I wanted to do, and then we were going to have a holding company separate for all this. So everybody, whether it was Kenya and Kenya Airways, South Africa Airways, everybody had a share in the whole code. Very important. So and what was the advantage for the indigenous carrier, like in Kenya, for instance? He was getting his meals subsidized because from the profit of all the other airlines, obviously he was getting a return on his investment. But, like I said, I met the president of Kenya. I met several presidents around these countries. None of them understood.
A lot to learn.
Perseverance, you keep going, as I say. But it taught me a lesson. And it was a good experience. And as I warned everybody, I said, if we do not grow like anything else, we will get eaten up eventually.
True.
So around 2015, as I predicted, the big boys came knocking at the door, and you make a decision, because we are a public company. We took the company public in 2006, I think. But there were a couple of major shareholders who wanted to get out, and we couldn't. It was getting more and more difficult to compete because we were pretty good because we had Ghana, we were surviving. We had Ghana, we had Rwanda, we had Lagos, and I'd built Abuja as well.
Yeah.
So we have a catering unit in Abuja.
Mm.
So the likes of BA who fly, or Air France who fly to those countries, if you like West Africa, forget Rwanda for a moment, you're able to offer them a deal for those 3 locations, which is what I was telling you they like. So you need to be able to do that. But it was getting more and more difficult because some of the bigger boys, who, like my company now, is morphed into what is called New Rest now, from ASL. And New Rest is a very large company. It's French. It's in over 54 countries, so you can imagine. And just to bear out the point, it has agreements, worldwide agreements with Qatar, Ethiopia, Emirates, BA for a lot of countries. So how do you compete?
The sort of scale you are trying to build for the African continent, they already have that across the world.
Exactly. And really, Emirates just phones them in Paris and says, "Oh, we're going to Nigeria or whatever. Take on our catering, please." End of story. So it's important. Scale can become important. Speaking from experience, but it was, in any case, we agreed to. They took over the majority of the shares of ASL New Rest. They asked me if I wanted to remain as an MD or CEO. I respectfully said, I think I've done my time. I shall leave it for younger, better people to take over. And I retired. And in retiring, though, they asked me, the French, that since I'm the founder and all that, would I stay on as their chairman, non-executive chairman? And I accepted, and I've been there for the last, 10 years almost now as a chairman, but they run the show. They asked me for some input, not necessarily, but yeah, it's worked out well. The business, I'm happy to say the business has grown under them, and it's done very well because we have international scale now, which is important. You see, we have it's still a Nigerian company, but with an international partner. So it does make it easier for us in Nigeria because Emirates, Qatar, all these BA, they just we have those. So it's difficult for anyone to compete with us on that scale. So that shows you what scale and growth is, working with other people. In between all this, I suppose I am a serial entrepreneur, and some young men came to me around, I think it was 2010, 2011, and said, "Uncle," as you like to say in Nigeria, "Uncle, we want to invest in fintech." I said, "What's that?" So they explained it to me, and I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting, but we want to do aggregation to start with." So they asked me to put, if I'd invest. They didn't have much money. I invested, and for which they said, "Okay, for that we'll give you 25% of the company." The young boys, and just coincidentally, because at my level, the CEO of Guinness, who was a friend of mine who was English at the time, said to me, "Oh, by the way, Richard, do you know anybody? We want to do this bottle top, sort of a winning thing,
raffle or scratch cards.
We want to use technology to do it." So I said, "Oh, it was just coincidence that these young men have come to see me. I'll send them to you. I don't know what it is, but anyway, long story short, they did that work. So they got off on the right foot, but they're very astute young men. Both have done very well in their lives since then. They're now in their 50s. And for nothing, they turned the company into a multinational, multi-millionaire dollar company. How did they do it? They focused, which is important. You must focus. Don't try to do everything. Focus on your core business and do it well. Once you've got that done and it's smooth and you've established it and it's running almost on autopilot, don't take your eye off it because things change. But you can then afford to expand or they soon quickly realized that, because everyone's doing all sorts of different aggregation, they said, let's stick with financial aggregation. So what did they do? They focused on the banks. And that's when you first started to see alerts.
Yeah.
Remember alerts? So the company, which was bought over, I'll tell you about it. It's called Vanso, or was. And we became the largest, because we started first mover advantage, the largest aggregator in the country. At one time, all those alerts, 75% of all the alerts in all the banks came through our system.
Wow.
Amazing. And those young men really did a good job, and then they made me chairman, and we worked at it, and we had a great team. Again, when people came on board, even down to secretaries, they could get bonus shares at the end of the year. So they were all invested in the company.
True.
Very important. Anyway, company grew and grew until we decided, the young men decided, and lots of people came into the aggregation. It's not very difficult. And but they had ideas. And we built a platform. Well, they built a platform. And so that platform became a platform because we wanted to go into mobile money. But we decided that mobile money is very big. And it's a very, very big cumbersome in terms of you need lots of advertising, lots of outlets. So we decided, okay, no, we're not going to do that. But what we'll do is we'll focus on money, mobile money, but in the banking sector directly. So we built platforms, which you all know today, which you use with GTB and Access Bank, your banking, your mobile money banking. Many of those platforms, we were the first people to put them in for all these banks. And we grew quite well until we were bought out by InterSwitch. And we did a swap with InterSwitch, and we are in InterSwitch now, and we've migrated. So that was that business. And I can tell you a lot more. But
thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. I believe it's a good time to drop the emojis, and and if you notice, I just allowed you to just express yourself and share your stories. And one of the things I was personally looking forward to was to just hear you talk about your growth story over the years, and so we could pick lessons. And one thing you did so well was that you kept re-emphasizing a few things. Perseverance was great. How you stick to your core competence over time, how you must make sure you then build systems. Once you want to begin to scale, you must build systems to enable you reach new markets, bring in more investors and the likes. And those were really, really amazing things. I'll ask you just one or two more questions. For our audience, please, if you've got a question, we don't have so much time anymore, but you can drop your questions in the chat room. I'll pick it up. But I've got a funny question I'll drop, and then I'll ask my main question. So I noticed when you started, sir, you made reference to Ibadan, right? And you made reference to your parents. I've heard it too many times. There's a, for want of other words, there's a cabal in Ibadan. It's almost the same. Ibadan has built a lot of men and women that have built a lot of businesses out of Nigeria, right? There are too many references to some Some people even call it Ibadan Connect. There's a one person who knows one person or who started business around the time you started it. And then you referenced your dad, right? So I just wanted to, if you don't mind, speak to that Ibadan connection. But more importantly, in your experience, as you talk through, it's almost as if you were in the right place, you knew the right person to talk to, you had good people around you. You in turn became a good person to younger entrepreneurs who they could walk up to, and you gave access, you gave counsel. Um, as I read your profile, part of your profile this morning, I mean, by some in some other life, I've been exposed to something you've done, and I've sat in rooms where things were said about you and how such a great connector you are and how you give access and things like that. So what is it with Ibadan, and how did you find the right connections? How did you maintain the right relationships over the years, even beyond the shores of Nigeria? If you don't mind, sir, can you just speak briefly to that? Because it's critical. In our part of the world, we run away from partnerships. Everybody wants to do things alone. People rarely give shares in their companies. You are advising that it's the right thing to do. So if you don't mind, please, just speak to that. Thank you.
I'll do my best. That's all order.
You've done so well. You've done so well.
Ibadan is where I grew up.
Okay.
My father was the chief medical officer for the Western region as a doctor in 1960. I was 5 years old. I came back. I was born in England, but I came back and went to school in Ibadan at Mary Hill Convent School. Many people went that I discovered there's a big Mary Hill alumni.
Jumaka, you must not say anything. Jumaka, you must not say, because I can see you dropping an emoji.
So great school, great starting point. Many people have done many things who came out of there, I have to say. It was the good old days. So from Ibadan, the Civil War started, and my father, who was very close to Akintola, actually, the late, he figured it was better for my mother and I to leave. So I went suddenly back to England, where I had to learn to wear shoes again because I was used to running around without shoes. So anyway, but my father, very important, kept me very much, because he never planned for me to go to school overseas, but circumstances in life. And well, I went to England, but went to boarding school. I was the only black man in that school. Hey, so I had to learn to stick up for myself.
Yeah.
But over the years, used to come back lots. So I had all my friends were in school, and even when I came back on holiday, so fast forward, when they were all in Greg's, my school with the brick or Kings or whatever, I'll be out of school before that because I would come from England and be waiting outside for them to jump fence. All kinds of things that you do as a man.
Boys.
But I kept in touch with all my friends, and it was easy. I don't know why, but we just all sort of, and then they eventually finished secondary school. Some came to university in England, or some came to boarding school later and to do their A levels. So I had a good Nigerian connection. And but if you like your country, which I do, and you like your food, especially, I'm a foodie, it's not very hard. So that was my Ibadan experience. Ibadan was a great place to grow up. It's a very nice, and do remember in those days it was really the capital. It was the biggest city in Africa.
Yes,
anybody lived in Ibadan. They didn't live in Lagos.
Even the university environment also.
Great university. Campus. Many of my friends' fathers were either lecturers, Lambo, all kinds of people. So it was a great community.
Okay.
And University of Ibadan grounds was beautiful.
Okay.
And it was considered one of the top universities in the world at one when I was there. I was young, but still. So I kept my relationships, and I learned over time that relationships are very important. Whatever you do in life, you should always try to keep your relationships. And it doesn't matter where people are. I judge people more by the content of who they are, not by the amount of their wallets. So,
thank you.
So then you just build networks, and it's very important to build networks. Speaking of sharing, well, I'm happy to say one of the ladies who runs a company for me now, or runs it for herself, actually, she started out as my secretary, then became my PA. She's very bright. Even though she was a secretary, she was a graduate, and she became my PA. And then she won a scholarship to do project management in MIT, a small thing from Nigeria, and came to meet me. Well, this was in ASL, and said, "Okay, I've got this scholarship, but they won't pay for everything." And so I said, "Where is it?" And she said, "MIT." I said, "MIT." She said, "Yeah."
Long.
I said, "Yeah," but I said, "My dear, be going, go. We'll pay for it. Whatever they won't pay for, we'll pay for." And she went, came back. She used to write all my studies, all my presentations in the end, for things we were doing. And when I retired, she said, "I can't stay here. I'll follow you." I said, "But I don't have any work. I'm retired." So I set up a company, which is called BSL, which does catering and logistics for oil companies mostly. And I said, "Well, Tulsi, you are going to run this company, not me. So here's 30%. I may appeal, but here's 30%. Give some more percentages to staff as you get them on. Run with them." I think she now has about 150 staff.
Wow.
But she's the boss. And she was brought to me by another lady who started the same way and ended up running another company. But she's late now, unfortunately. But people have to grow. You have to make space for people to grow. And I told you I'm lazy. So, as I'm going up the ladder,
you just build the systems and then people can run it.
They'll be feeding me in my old age. And
it's a good way to plan retirement.
There's a selfish motivation as well.
Amazing. Thank you for that.
Helped answer the question. I'm not sure, but
no, you did answer it. And my last question, and I'm asking, I know we've spent over an hour. Amazing. We don't have so much time again because I understand you have things to get to. And also because I know quite a number of us listening to you are young. Almost all the areas where you've invested and you've grown your businesses are not in very flashy areas, not very popular areas. In fact, you appear to have chosen opportunities along the value chain of major sectors. So I'm curious as to why you did it that way, and what would be your advice as you look at younger folks starting out businesses who may not get the attention or the glamour now? What will be your advice? So that's one part of the question. The other side of the question is, you seem to have taken a very long-term approach to all the things you've done. Giving shares very early, allowing international collaborations. You said you're lazy, but for you wanted a situation where you were planning for the future, a bit more long-term. So what are your views on that, sir? And how would you look at us today, building or starting new businesses? What should we be doing?
Okay, well, I'm going to start with something that might surprise you, but easy come, easy go. I left out, in my youth, I was moving fast. And I sometimes tell people, they don't believe me, but I was richer when I was 30 something than I am today. I don't know whether that's because I've also paid school fees.
Really?
That, but never mind that. I realized that the future is very important, and you have to build towards the future. There's an old saying, and sorry to be boring, Rome was not built in a day. It's true. Just like Nigeria is not going to be built in 50 years. That's going to be built in 100, but yeah, the way we want it. But but we have to keep at it. That's it's like life itself. So my advice is, first of all, for me personally, I can only speak for personally, is don't always follow the crowd. Think about what you can do, what you can contribute. Think about your advantages. What do you know? What can you do better? What do we need? We need just about everything to be doing properly. So it's not that difficult. Don't try to pick the easy things. One of the things, if I was to tell young people today, it's a difficult one, but we need farming. We need food. We need to be self-sustainable. We have a great country, a great nation full of people, but we don't have food. We don't have, these things. Grow food, not cash crops only. And processing down the line, all very difficult. I know, it's easy to talk about these things, but it is possible. It is possible because it's been done in many countries before. So if they can do it there, be adaptable and try to find the right partners. Don't try to do everything yourself. So I have looked for the areas that some of them I fell into, some of them came to, some I realized. The in-flight catering, nobody told me. I just saw it. I thought there's a great opportunity. No one was, I think someone had tried, but they weren't doing it perfect. Do it to a standard. Whatever you do, don't say, okay, this is, as I told you in the beginning, that's what we do it like this. No. Try to be creative. The normal things, you've got to work hard. You need a bit of luck. And I always tell people, you usually create your own luck as well. What they call luck is you fall into being in the right place at the right time because you are there working. So it just try to make associations. I can't be clearer than this. You need to be very straightforward with yourself and your colleagues. If you, as I told many people when I started out, and it's unfortunate, if you think you're clever, you're attacking yourself small here, it's not, you're affecting everybody, including yourself.
True.
Isn't it? It's one for all and all for one. You're either in it or you're not. So that's important. I picked areas that I thought duty free, no one doing it. In-flight catering, no one doing it. Well, really, no one doing it. When we started lounges, I didn't even talk about lounges.
We didn't have so much.
No one was really doing it to an international standard. They were just doing whatever. Try to make standards, because it also makes higher barriers to entry. Anybody who wants to compete with you or join you has to also step up. When you do it as easy, then everybody can join in and do it. It's easy. So you are helping yourself by raising the standards. I know it's not easy. Perseverance. That's what I think it's very hard. But as you see, it was possible. It may, actually, I'll be fair, I think it's harder for young people today than it was in my time. That's I used to think young people were not trying hard enough, but I've taken a back seat, and my children, who are all grown up now, have made it very clear that people are too lucky. Yes. And I analyzing it, I know they're correct.
So allow me to just quickly jump on that, and that's my last question before I bring you, okay? Because I'm going through some of the questions people are asking. There is And thank you for sharing it that way, because sometimes as young people, we think the older generation do not want to accept that things are somewhat harder now. Yes, you faced some peculiar challenges, or challenges generally. I mean, you talked about how you needed to raise funds and someone sat on your proposal, banks and all of that. If I dare say today, it's the same thing. Inflation rate, banks won't listen. You have to put in your own money first and all of that. But the question is, in spite of all those challenges, you got started, you grew through the years, and then today you can say you succeeded. There's a lot of young people, I mean, and some on this call, who would look at you and look at some of the things we're trying to do and look at the challenges that we have to face, and would rather just give up and say it's not worth it, because everything around the system seems built to frustrate you. Power, food, trying to get licenses, all those things are there. And as I listen to you, they were there during your time as well, right? But today, and I'm sure you have a network of friends and business partners that have succeeded. You also do business with international partners. I want to believe you also have partners who have had those sort of problems in their own countries as well. So when you look at us starting out in that growth phase, or trying to give up or just dump everything and run out of the country and hope that we get into a place where there are better infrastructure and things will be easier. Honestly, sir, straight from your heart, what would you be saying to those young entrepreneurs that are about to start and those that have started that are facing these challenges? You're even trying to do it the right way, but like we say in Nigeria, some of those hurdles are there. Some of those things are staring you in the face, and yet we want to succeed, yet we want to persevere. But we don't want to persevere for so long, so we don't die while we're in the process. Honestly, what would you say to us? And I see some questions along that line, and I just thought to jump.
Nothing easy. And let's borrow a phrase from my father. Nothing, I think I said this before.
Yeah, you said it as you started. Yeah. But some people came in late, so I just thought you could.
Nothing good was ever easy. Nothing worth having was ever easy. You got to work for it. Maybe I should emphasize just a point. It took me 3 years to get the duty-free shop. 3 years to even get it. I had to go. I sat down. I ate epan boli with the people in.
You sat in people's offices. They didn't want to see you.
But yeah, you come down to the level, whatever. You there. You have to. It took me 7 years to get a lounge agreed with the fan, just to show you. And I have one project which I never started in the end. I parked the license. It took 21 years. One of my staff said, Oga, when we looked at the record, this paper took 21 years to get.
What?
There you go. So, and it's a license.
Wow.
It's a license to do work. I even tell you, it's a license to open an in-town duty-free shop. It took 21 years.
21 years.
Because our system is anachronistic, but we live in it. I'll also tell you, yes, I think it is harder for young people today. Inflation, whatever, everything. The system is stacked against one in some respects. But you see, with every difficulty is an opportunity. So all these things are creating opportunities for you to climb over and succeed. That's why I say never give up. And every successive generation, it might seem that it's worse, but I used to think my father's generation had it easier than I did. But when I really look at it, those guys worked very, very hard.
True.
And they didn't have many of the advantages that I had. I also believe, just so you know, that I'm not I come from a very lucky generation. not just in Nigeria, around the world. People who have grown up in my generation, taking in Europe, and I'm not trying to go off point, but you've mentioned internationally.
Yeah.
This is the longest period until the Ukraine war started that Europe has ever been in peace.
Without war. True.
Yeah. It's also been a huge growth period. It is in this period that social security started in Europe and most of the world. All these things didn't exist for my father's generation or my mother's generation. So we are lucky now. The world, like I know, like economics goes in cycles. So the generation coming, or the generation here, should I say, and coming, are going to find it more difficult. But that challenge is the same everywhere in the world today, and success is possible, as you can see. I mean, the world. But I could go on about this, but success is something that is achievable. You can see we need to fight for more equity, and let's go back to Nigeria. It is entrepreneurs like yourselves and business people, whatever, and professionals who are going to make it happen.
Yeah.
We must not rely exclusively on government. Government are there, and eventually government will learn. In my lifetime, I think, if you really look at it, which is not such a good thing, in the West, which is ahead, government is controlled by business.
True.
If you really look at it. So I think we need to get going. I think and the opportunities are there, and I repeat, they are not easy, but they're there. And I think agro-allied, these areas are
services,
industrial services. Industrialization, though, is key. We must, and there's a new world. I mean, solar power, all this sort of stuff. You know, there's a lot of opportunity. Not easy. I didn't say. I can't lie to you. It is not easy.
You haven't. You haven't.
I can't answer everything. I don't have the answer for everything, but I'm always happy to. If anyone has a specific question, if I can, I'm happy to answer it.
Thank you so much. You've done such an amazing work. Jumoke, I believe you're here. Thank you. It's been an honor. I should, as I'm signing out, call you Uncle Rich, and I know a few people call you. It's been an honor speaking with you, and I can't wait for us to have a meeting physically. But thank you so much. Thank you for such inspiration. Thank you for the examples you lay, and thank you for sharing from your heart. We truly honor and appreciate it. You can see all the claps and the loves and all of that. Jumoke, over to you.
Thank you very much, GT. Thank you very much. I call him RTA. I think when I was telling my team that he's a legend, I've been getting messages on my phone saying thank you for bringing Uncle Richard onto the call. There's so much to learn from him, as we've all gathered. I won't try and rehash anything that's been said, but just to say that thank you so much for obliging. I have my notes full. I was writing notes as you were talking, even though I've been through this conversation with you before. We'll definitely make sure we share with the larger house some of the things. I think there's someone raising their hands, I hope, but unfortunately we won't be able to oblige for any direct questions. We will try and see if we can do a repeat of this sometime much later in the new year, if Uncle Richard will oblige us. But suffice to say that there's so much to go back and chew on. We're very grateful. And I'm sure most business owners here can resonate with what you've been talking about. Perseverance, it's not easy. One thing I'm taking and I'm going to put on my wall is nothing good comes easy. So we stay with it. Thank you. 21 years to get a license. I think I persevere, but I am not exactly sure I could do that. But
that's the whole time.
I'm telling you, the time is on the way to getting married.
Jumoke, Benga, and everybody, it's an honor to be here talking to you all. I have plenty of time, so if you want me to talk in the future, just let me know.
We'll
Being in
definitely be
retirement,
back.
we have plenty of time.
Thank you so much, sir. We will definitely be back. Who knows? We might bring you into one of our masterclass series when you're physically in the country. That would be really lovely.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much, sir.
Take
And have
care.
a
Have
safe
a
trip
good
back
weekend,
into.
everybody.
Yes,
Bye.
sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And
Bye.
thank you everyone for joining the call. It's been wonderful having you. If you haven't registered for our Triad Masterclass series, please do. That is coming up on the 10th of December. We would love to have you attend physically. But thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure having you, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Sorry, we're a little bit short on time. Please pardon us. Thank you, and have a very good weekend. Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Oof. Sorry, Aisha, you raised your hand. Is that deliberate?